What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome into another edition of the Jay and Sir podcast, coming to you from the Mariners off day with just a little recap of last week. We're going to break down the Texas series. We'll talk about the upcoming series with the Cleveland Guardians and anything else Mariners that happens to come up during our discussion. As always, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new or you're just lurking, and head over to Twitter and follow MarinersSUR on Twitter. Link will be in the description down below. Not much to be disappointed about this week. The Mariners finish up a 6-1 homestand, capped off with a 3-game sweep of the Texas Rangers. And assuming the Rangers don't make a 2001 Guardians type comeback against the Mariners are about to be sitting with a 9-game lead in the division. How you feeling this week, my friend?
Feeling great. Yeah, that was a great weekend of baseball. And like you said, a 9-game lead is no small feat. So feeling really good. It's one of those days with coming off that weekend, you almost wish there wasn't an off day today. It kind of feels empty not having Mariners baseball tonight, but a well-deserved off day for the fellas for sure.
Yeah, definitely deserved and needed. But I'm with you. I was at work today, because normally at work, I'm like, okay, just got to get through the day, and I got a Mariners game tonight. It was tough not being able to have that today. I think I was a little crankier at work without my Mariners coming up tonight. But I'm with you, a well-deserved off day. And truthfully, it's going to end up being a pretty productive off day for the Mariners with the Mets doing work on the Rangers. So not a bad day at all. Even on the off days, the Mariners seem to be able to add to their lead. We'll dive into the Texas series for sure. But, I think, and I bring it up in my post games all the time, 9-game lead. And I think everybody knows it's nothing to sneeze at, but that is such a substantial margin the Mariners have. And I think both of us would agree, far from over, a lot of baseball left. I don't, until we see that they've clinched, I'm not counting anything. But I mean, this is not just like, oh, hey, they're leading the division in late June. 9 games is incredibly substantial.
Yeah, I think I heard on the radio, Dave, I heard it right. It's the biggest lead in all of baseball. So certainly something to feel great about. And I think it's one of those things where it just even helps the players with, confidence. If you have a 2 or 3 game losing skid, which every team's going to have at some point, I think it kind of helps from the pressure from mounting. And then on the flip side with the Rangers and Astros, I mean, they're really up against it to try to cut into that lead. And it just creates a lot of pressure on trying to get every single win that you can. And obviously you're always going for it, but I think there's something to be said from playing that far out in front and just kind of the freeness and looseness that can allow teams to play with. So very, very happy to be in this spot.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point you brought up. I mentioned on my post-game recap a little bit, because listen, the Mariners are going to go through a slump, right? They're going to lose 7 out of 10 at some point. They're going to, I mean, obviously we hope it doesn't get out of hand, but they're just going to have, a road trip where just they're not dialed in. They lose a few games, a homestand, they just struggle, and probably a series where they just randomly get swept, and it happens. It happens to every team in baseball. But where they're at right now, they can kind of afford to have that a little bit. And, unless Texas or Houston just goes on a huge streak, like you said, you should still be in pretty good position, even with those little slumps that are going to happen at some point. Another thing I've talked about a few times, I want to get your take on it. I think this lead has allowed them to be patient with acquiring players in a good way. I think if this team was 3 games back, they'd have to spend $3 to get $2 and get a reliever. There'd be no other option. You can't let this bullpen keep going the way it's going a little bit, or you would need that bat and you'd have to overpay a little bit. Right now with the 9-game lead, I think we all want them to make additions. I'm not saying that, but they can wait it out a little bit here. They can wait till the deadline or wait on Santos's return as well.
Yep, agree. Forwards on that, certainly. So like you said, let some of these bullpen pieces get healthy, see how they look between Santos and Spire, and then on the offensive side, I think it allows you, a chance to give Polanco's probably back in the next week or so. It allows you to throw him out there for a month to see if you can get, pre-2024 Polanco back. I don't know if I have a ton of hope for it, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. And so it affords you that as well, this to see if you can get him going. And if you can, that would be a big addition in its own right. Just getting that type of production at the second base spot. And I think we have the potential for that in-house. And now you can kind of run him out there for 2, 3, 4 weeks and just see if something clicks. And if not, then that's probably a spot you need to look to upgrade. But yeah, it gives you definitely a lot of just things like that you can kind of explore and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to give this team a chance to allow Jorge Polanco to come back, play for a month, see if he can kind of find his past, performance in there somewhere. And if he does, great. You're set up at second base. And if not, you were able to kind of give that, I don't want to necessarily call it an audition, but then okay, we've got to move on. But the 9-game lead, and I don't, again, to anybody listening, neither of us are saying like, oh, this division's a lock and you can just do whatever you want. But it is allowing this team some time to let Mitch Garver heat up. Or maybe if you're 3-4 back, they would have had to make a move. It's going to allow them to bring Polanco back. And I know Polanco's been scuffling, but right now you're just not getting great second base production from Demo or Ryan Bliss. Love both guys, but it's not really happening. So you need to see what you have in Jorge Polanco. Can he rebound? And you're going to have a few weeks to see if he can do that. Be patient on Spire and Santos. And just, other little things as well. Cal Raleigh can get a couple more days off in there occasionally. And, I don't know what y'all get your take on it, but obviously September last year was tough. And I wonder if one of the reasons was the team just got a little bit burnt out from having to do what they did in August. And I've actually used the analogy on my show a few times. The Rangers are a perfect example of why a big division lead is great. They faltered the second half of last year, but they had done just enough in the first half that they had one more hot streak in them. They get in and win the World Series. So the Mariners are in position now where it's going to take everything for Texas and Houston to try to catch them. Now, if the Mariners just have that one more hot streak, they could pull away potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a great example of Texas last year because they, barely hung on to making the playoffs, and it was certainly due to their, early wins that they put in the bank. And even I think this Texas series was a good example of being able to push Castillo back, give Kirby and Gilbert an extra day rest. So you can just do little things like that. I just feel like, in the past, whenever we played the Astros, it seems like we always played or faced Justin Verlander in game one. And I remember there was a few times in there where they did exactly what they did. They pushed him back. And, it's when you're chasing like that, I think getting game one of those series is huge. And so, throwing your ace out there, being able to do little things like that, give, arms an extra rest, but also line it up for some of these head-to-head series and really try to take the wind out of themselves. And that's exactly what we did. So yeah, you can just do little things like that, gives players extra rest, but also, kind of can line up, I think, key pieces in key series when you are trying to build additional leads or hold teams off. So I think this type of lead definitely provides a ton of benefits that maybe go unnoticed.
And you brought up a great point with this. This series was a perfect example of it. Texas, yes, they won 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers before, but they had to have all hands on deck for that series. They didn't have the luxury of being able to push people back because they need every win they can get. And obviously, I don't think the Mariners were trying to sacrifice the last game of the White Sox series, and they truthfully probably should have won that game. But it allowed them to be able to do that, line up their big three for more important series where, like you said, these other teams now don't have that luxury. They've got to get every win they can get, essentially, to try and catch you, where the Mariners can be a little bit more patient on those things, especially like the White Sox series. You won the first 3. Sure, you want to sweep it, but let's push Castillo back, get Hancock in there, and we're lined up perfectly for Texas. So I think that's a fantastic point. Moving on to the Texas series, obviously, the Mariners sweep the series. And truthfully, to me, the White Sox series was great. I'll always take 3 out of 4. But all 4 games are pretty even.
Yeah.
Against Texas, the Mariners looked like a much better baseball team. Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I was actually at the game Friday and Saturday, and I would agree. The Friday game, Texas, jumps out to a 2-0 lead before I even got to my seat. And you're like, all right, God, they just won 2 against the Dodgers here to maybe come. But, once Garver hit that 2-run home run, I had a very, very good, feeling about things. And then, Saturday, they just absolutely took it to Nathan Eovaldi, who's a great big game pitcher. And I mean, they were on him from start to finish. I actually left before the 9th inning implosion that we had. So from what I saw, we completely dominated them. And then, Sunday kind of more of the same, just took it to him and didn't really give him a chance. Pitching was amazing. Hitting, I thought, looked really, really good. Corey Seager, I think he's had 25 plate appearances this year against the Mariners and has yet to have a hit. So that's just a remarkable job by the pitching to hold down such a dangerous hitter in him. But I would agree, in all 3 games, it kind of felt a little bit of the inverse of last year. Like whenever we went to Texas, it felt like we were never really in a game. And it's like, God, these guys are head and shoulders above us. And it's kind of what I think this weekend probably felt like to Rangers fans, is like, man, this team can really pitch it. Julio's going now, Garver's heating up. Like, we've got our work cut out for us to try to catch these guys. So yeah, I agree. It was a great series where we really played good baseball, pitching, hitting, and on defense as well. And on the base pass, you got Rojas scoring from second on a pass ball, and just everything kind of went right for us throughout the whole entire weekend.
And yeah, it really was the opposite of the Rangers games last year, where last year that was the Rangers getting all, they would have scored from second on a wild pitch last year. They would have survived a ninth inning Mariners comeback with a great diving stop at first base by somebody. That was exactly how we were losing to them last year. Go up 2-0 in the first inning, and they would hit a 2-run home run right away in the bottom of the first and take away all the momentum. It really was a true inverse, I felt, of last year as well, which was obviously awesome to see. But yeah, I mean, there really wasn't anything. The Mariners didn't do well this series. The bats were pretty good. Maybe could have been a little bit better on Friday against Urena in the bullpen. But, overall, I thought they did well against Haney. They pounded Eovaldi. And again, at the end of the day, they got to Dunning, chased him before the fifth inning, and added on against the bullpen. And yeah, at no point in that series, outside of maybe the top of the first on Friday, did I think the Mariners weren't the superior team. I don't mean that as a diss to the Rangers at all, but that's the other thing with this division too. I look at, you mentioned they had the biggest lead in baseball, which is true. And you look at other divisions, the Phillies have an 8-game lead on the Braves. And I know Acuna's out for the year, but I can see the Braves getting red hot and making that close. I'll get your take on this, and a lot of baseball left, but I just don't really see it from Texas and Houston. I'm not trying to jinx it or anything, but I just don't really see. I could see them playing better stretches. They will. They'll have their moments. But I see the Mariners having a 9-game lead, and I think the Mariners are the better team.
Yeah, I would agree. With Houston, they've had a couple unfortunate pitching injuries, and I think will make it tough for them. Although, like, Hunter Brown's pitched very, very well dating back to that outing he had against the Mariners. I think he started throwing a sinker, and he's been like really, really good since then. Obviously they have kind of the big pieces in the lineup, but it just feels like they have a few, possibly too many holes on that roster to make a big run. I could be wrong, and it wouldn't surprise me. And then with Texas, I think they're interesting because all of last year, I felt like they really, really kind of overperformed. I mean, everybody on that roster had career years. The lead that they built was built on like this historic hitting with runners in scoring position. Then once that, fell off, I think I was listening to the pregame show Friday with one of the Rangers guys, and I think they played under 500 ball after that hot start. I don't remember what their record was, but he mentioned something like that. So like I said, all last year I was looking at, I'm like, God, everybody's having a career year. So I think they're better than they played. With Texas, they give me a little bit of concern just because they do have, Scherzer through the other night. DeGrom could be coming back. Tyler Mahle. There might be one other pitcher in there, or maybe he's back now. So, they could have a very, very difficult rotation, but it's also very, very injury prone and guys that are a little bit older. And I think their lineup will certainly be better than they've been. So if I had to pick one of the two teams that I think could maybe sneak up, and maybe it's Texas, just, if DeGrom and Scherzer come back and they're tough to hit like they've always been, they could be very, very difficult. But once again, we have such a big lead that it, hopefully can help us stave off if that does happen. And I would agree. I think we are the better team. And then also with the lead that we have, we're likely to be the most aggressive team at the deadline. And so I think in terms of teams improving, once again, Texas has a lot coming back. So you have to factor that in. But I think we very well could be the team that improves the most on paper as well between now and August 1st as well. So yeah, I like where we're at, and I like our chances.
And you made a great point on Twitter today, I think this morning. There's a chance Texas and Houston sell. They're not just 9 games out of the division. They're 6 or 7 back in the wild card as well. So, I mean, there's a chance that both those teams go, listen, we don't think we're going to catch them. The Mariners make moves and not only, like I said, I think right now the Mariners are better than both teams. I don't know if they're 9 games better, but they don't have to be 9 games better. They just need to be even with those teams, or not 10 games worse, and they'll win the division. So, and on top of that, what do you think the odds that Texas and Houston sell? What do you think the odds of that are? Because I don't know, but I do think it's possible.
Yeah, I think with Houston, maybe a little bit more likely because Bregman's a pending free agent. Tucker's a year off. I think Verlander maybe is. I don't know if there's anybody else that comes to mind. But I think like an Alex Bregman could be somebody that make a ton of sense for them to move off and just get what they can. And maybe Tucker as well, too, because at a certain point, their farm's in rough shape and they got to start thinking about, all right, how are we going to build up, kind of the second wave of a run around, Altuve's getting older, but I think he's still got some years of baseball left. Jordan's locked up for a while, but it's something they might have to consider because they could get an absolute haul for Tucker, and then Bregman might bring back an interesting piece or two. With Texas, it's a little bit, I don't know what they do because I just don't know who's a pending free agent for them. Like Seager and Simeon are obviously locked up long-term. I don't know where Garcia or Lowe are at, but like, Evan Carter, Wyatt Langford, Duran, Josh Smith, they're all very young players, Heim, that they're going to hang on to. But I mean, once again, who knows? Maybe DeGrom, if he comes back, or Scherzer, something like that, they could move for prospects. I think if any team were to strip down more, it'd probably be the Astros just because of the proximity to free agents some of their key players are, whereas Texas might more kind of just hold and, like David Robertson, Kirby Yates, players like that, they might cash in for some prospects. I think they'd be less of a teardown. But yeah, I could be missing somebody that's closer to free agency that they would maybe consider moving off because both teams were concerned about, I think, payroll going into the year, especially Texas was pretty outspoken about it. So, I guess where I'm going with that is I don't know if they would re-sign like an Adolis Garcia, for example, if he's a year away from free agency. So they'd be more inclined to cash in on him, but I just don't know exactly where they're at in regards to free agency.
Yeah, I agree. I think Houston's the more likely team to do a teardown. Not saying they're going to, but I think they're more likely. I think Texas, to your point, Texas, I see maybe more of like what the Mariners did last trade deadline. Like you mentioned, Robertson, Yates, maybe trying to bring back someone that they think can help them, depending on where they're at in the standings. If they're 6 back, they might go, hey, we're willing to sell, but we think these guys can help us. Very similar to the return the Mariners got for a Paul Sewald. Hey, we're willing to sell a little bit, but Rojas is going to help at second base for us. It's going to be an improvement. So I could see something more like that, but I think you're right on Texas with Carter, Langford, Young, Smith, Simeon and Seager are older, but they're not trading those guys. So I'd be very hard pressed to see them really selling. Houston, I think could, and Houston could probably get away with it a little bit more and I was going to say that too. Both teams, honestly, Houston more so could probably sell it to the fan bases. Texas is coming off a World Series win. Houston's won 2 World Series, been to 7 straight ALCSs. So it's not like you couldn't sell, hey, we're going to reset a little bit this year. And I think the fan bases would be fine. These aren't teams that are in 15-year droughts that the GM's jobs, from what I know, are on the line. So they may be a little bit more willing to make moves with that. I don't know, but it's possible.
Right. And Adolis Garcia has looked, he's 2.5 years away from free agency, so they may not move him, but at the same time, with Langford and Carter emerging in the corners with Taveras and center, they might, that might be something where they look at like, hey, we have 3 young outfielders, and if we could get a couple decent prospects for Garcia, maybe they would move on for him. So that might be the one big hitter I highly doubt it, but they may entertain to move. So I think, like you said, there'd be more small moves in the bullpen side of things that they looked at, like you said, cash in and try to get a Rojas and a couple prospects type deal.
Exactly. And Garcia is a tough one too, because I think it would make some sense. He's also having his worst year. So they may look at it like the value's low. We'd rather have him just build his value back up, and maybe in the off season, that's a move they make. But that's definitely one I think to keep an eye on. Like you said, they've got young outfielders. It would make some sense where they could get some possible ready to go MLB players, and it'd be more of a retool than a rebuilding type trade. But it is definitely interesting to think about, because I don't know at what scale the Mariners are going to be buyers, but there's certainly no way they're not going to do something. Now, I don't know if it's going to be on the scale of a Luis Robert or a Mark Canha, but the Mariners are going to more than likely. I don't see any scenario where they're not better after the trade deadline, just how much better. So, I think bottom line for what both of us are saying here, Mariners are in great shape. You couldn't ask for them to be in better shape. I've seen heartbreak before. We've seen it, but as of June, what is it? June 19th, June 17th. I think we're all pretty happy where this team is at right now.
Absolutely. And I'm pulling up the strength of schedule here as well. Mm-hmm. And we still have Angels have an easier schedule than us, but obviously that's kind of irrelevant for this conversation. So Houston's real close to us for strength of schedule, but we still have the easiest remaining schedule left for any contender in the AL. And Texas is kind of right in the middle of the road. So and that'll even get easier after we get done with the Guardians. And I think we have the Twins up close, which that's 3-6. Of our 18 toughest games, 6 of them will get done here the next, I think, 10 days. Or sorry,
Yeah.
we play Tampa at the end of this. But in the next 2 weeks, we'll get done with 6 of those 18 toughest remaining games. So the schedule, I mean, really helps us out as well, too. It's the easiest one out there for the AL. And I think that's important to mention, too. It's not like we're in this position because we play this super easy schedule. It's actually quite the opposite. And so that schedule should hopefully help us hang on as well. So I think that's exciting.
That's a great point. I forgot to even mention that this team's played a brutal schedule. It's eased up a little bit recently, but for the most part, they have had a really tough schedule. And, you get Minnesota and Baltimore in the next homestand, then you're done with those teams.
Yeah.
And other than that, I think you still got the Yankees coming to town at some point. I'm not sure when. I think September, maybe they come in. And you still have you've only played the Angels once. You've only played the A's twice. So you've got some series left. And one thing we didn't even mention, right now, you've got the tiebreakers over Texas and Houston as well. That can change, but I think for Texas to get the tiebreaker, they're going to have to win every game against the Mariners the rest of the way. So the Mariners can just go 2-4 against Texas. And Houston, they've got the tiebreaker. So that 9-game lead is 10. So It's just everything is really kind of coming up roses. And I'm sure this can be clipped and regretted later what we're talking about in September. But, and listen, right now, we're just talking right now, everything is really, really looking good. Any other things, takeaways from the Texas series that you had? We didn't talk much about individual performances, but I think pushing back the starters one day was outstanding, and they all looked dialed in all 3 starts.
Yeah, I agree. I think giving them that extra day of rest was a really good decision. So, George Kirby's been just masterful the last 4 or 5 outings ever since they kind of paired him with Garver behind the plate. So I think that was great to see. Garver had another big home run. He's been on a couple weeks now of really swinging the bat well. Tyler Locklear, I think's looked pretty impressive in his MLB kind of first stint. Julio looks like he's, coming around. Canzone had a good homestand. Rojas has kind of heated up a little bit more. I think really the one player who had a rough homestand was JP, and he was going really, really well before. So I'm hopeful that he can get it turned around again on, this road trip. But like I said, there just wasn't really much to be disappointed about on this homestand. Obviously we didn't swing it very well against Chicago, but like I said, we got 3 out of 4, all you can ask for. And then sweeping the Rangers was, huge. So yeah, just a great homestand and really put us in a good spot with some pretty good individual performances mixed in there as well.
Yeah, I think too. I think Dom Canzone's a great call out because I think it was kind of low key. He didn't have necessarily like the big 3-run home run that everybody saw or anything like that, but he low key had a really nice homestand. His OPS is up to, I think, 725 or something like that, which, he's kind of a weird player, a weird profile guy for me, but that'll play. That'll play for you. So quietly a really nice homestand for Canzone. And, I'm with you. The bats didn't quite get going against Chicago. I will say, I think you played about as tough of pitching matchups as you could with the White Sox. You ran into Feedy. Thorpe looked pretty good in his debut. And, it's easy to say when you win. As much as Cannon hasn't been great, I thought his stuff actually did look really good. And then Crochet is arguably the best lefty in the AL. So, and the Astros get to face him now this week. So the advantage there.
Good.
Exactly. And yeah, I'm with you. I think pushing the starters back really helped. I think they all had a little bit more juice. Logan goes 8 yesterday. Honestly, I think the only negative from the series was Bizardo's performance on Saturday. One more thing I want to talk about before we get into Cleveland. Sounds like Ty France is close to coming back. Obviously, very likely Tyler Locklear just goes down. It makes sense. We want Locklear playing every day. France was red hot before the injury. I don't think France should lose his job for that or anything. Is there a way you can keep Locklear on the roster? DFA Zavala? Do you see a way that could work and that they might do that?
Yeah, I think you could, because like you said, France definitely deserves to get first base back. DH is the other spot, but, Garver is swinging it better. So I think you want to keep giving him consistent at-bats. And, while Haniger hasn't like showed power lately, his at bats have actually been solid and his overall numbers are okay as well. So, you know, I think the only reason, and part of it is you want to have Tyler Locklear getting consistent at bats. He's a young player, a good prospect. So I just wouldn't want to see him sitting on the bench. So I think the only way they maybe keep him up is if, France is coming back pretty quickly from a hairline fracture in his heel. So if they want to, kind of limit him to maybe 2 or 3 starts in a row, I think maybe you do DFA Zavala, and then you can keep Locklear up, and that means, all right, maybe he plays first base every 3 to 4 days, and then at DH, there's once a week Garver's catching, so that gives them a second start at DH. And then, maybe you can probably find 1 or 2 more, because it seems like they like to give Garver a day off after he catches. There's another one, and then, Haniger can go to the outfield. So I think there is a way you could probably get him 3 to 4 starts a week. But personally, I think they have the coverage, they have the veteran bats that are going well enough that I'd rather him just go back to Tacoma and get consistent at bats in case there is another injury or whatever it may be. He's kind of ready to go and hasn't been sitting a ton. I think there is a way you could keep him and get him 3 to 4 starts a week. And maybe that's something they do. And I think if they do want to limit France a little bit and just be careful, I think that's something they should probably seriously consider. But I think you're right that it's likely he will go back down, even though, his performance has been good enough to stay for sure.
Yeah, and I really don't have a problem either way. I can stomach both. I get like, well, why is Zavala on the roster? I will always point out teams don't like to DFA and release guys if they don't have to. Obviously, there comes a point when you have to do it. The even more reason why the Tyson Miller one is shocking. But I'm sure they're going to look at this and go, okay, we can just send Tyler Locklear down, roll out Ty France, and keep doing what we're doing. Or they could DFA Zavala as well. It makes it a little more complicated. I'm with you. I think it can work. I think more than likely, if I had to put money on it, I think Locklear just goes down.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the easiest solution to it.
Right.
And it's not going to upset anybody. Locklear will understand. The organization's going to understand. It's going to get him every day at bats. It makes sense. But there definitely is a path, I think, to doing it. I'm curious if they do, but I think more than likely Locklear will go down. I'm fine either way. I'm not wild about Zavala still on the roster, but I think the issue is, and I'll get your take on it, they've got Garver catching Kirby, and I don't think they want Garver catching much more than that. And then if Cal has to be run for in a late game, I think Zavala is the guy that would go in and catch. So it's weird how they're doing it, but I think that's kind of their thought process on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when they started catching Garver for Kirby, I think they were like pretty close to being like, all right, you're going to become the backup catcher. He was just struggling. But he started hitting at the same point. And so now it's kind of like, all right, we probably don't want to run him back there too much and risk him getting injured. So I think they got a good thing going with catching Kirby, and it's a way to get his bat in the lineup and free up DH. So, and, Locklear did play quite a bit of third base, I think, his first year in the minors. So I'm just thinking, I don't think he's played there at all this year, but that'd be the other option, is if they think he's adequate at third. I don't think they would do this, but you could keep him up and play him there and then move Rojas over to second because, Moore and Bliss are struggling. But I don't know what they think about his defense. He looked good at first, but if they think he could stand over at third and be average, that's another avenue where they could, definitely get him enough at-bats. So that might be the only kind of twist in all this, but I don't think he's played there at all this year. So it'd be a pretty big leap if they were to do that. But yeah, I agree on the Zavala thing. I just don't think they want to overexpose Garver at catcher and risk any injuries there.
Yeah, like you said, it was kind of funny because when they first put Garver back there, I think it was sort of like, listen, he's not hitting, so we're going to utilize and have him catch a little bit and make his value go up, at least as a catcher. OPSing 600 is a little bit more reasonable. And then he started hitting. So it's like, okay, now we need the bat to line up, like you said. It's kind of put them in a tough spot. And I know people are frustrated with it, but I think they like having Zavala there as sort of the, okay, like we've won the first, like the Guardian series, they win the first 2. Zavala catches game 3, gives Cal a day off, lets Garver DH still. It allows them to have Haniger DH. And so it gives them a little bit of, I think, wiggle room. I'm with you on Locke. I don't think he's played third base this year. He obviously has played it originally. That's kind of just, I don't know what the org's thought on it is as well. Do they think he can handle, like you said, if they think he can be average or even like just a little bit below average, it might be worth it. Like you said, Rojas can go to second, allows Demo to be more in the outfield and pinch run and everything like that. But I think more than likely it's just Locklear goes down. I think they're going to look at that's just the easiest avenue for everything here, essentially.
Yep, completely agree.
And then also Jorge Polanco has started his rehab assignment this week. We did talk a little bit about Polanco earlier in the video, but and I love Dylan Moore and I like Ryan Bliss, but I think we're both in agreement that I'm ready. Bliss probably goes back down and Demo returns to more of that starting against lefties, pinch running, defensive replacement type role.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, last thing we are going to talk about. The Mariners begin a 3-game set with the Cleveland Guardians this week. Big series because the Guardians are above the Mariners in terms of getting that bye week for the wild card round. So this is a team that you're already down 1-2 versus them this season. It is a pretty big series to maybe gain some ground in, for potentially getting the wild card series off and getting to take it off and watch some baseball for a week while we line up our rotation for the ALDS. Hopefully. Thoughts on the Guardians? They've got obviously Josh Naylor, Jose Ramirez, Stephen Kwan's back swinging the ball pretty well, and they can pitch. They remind me of the Mariners a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be tough. Stephen Kwan, I think, is hitting his average is like 398 or something crazy like that. He's been unbelievable this year. Josh Naylor's been really good. Jose Ramirez has been kind of the Jose Ramirez you expect. He did go out on the paternity list yesterday, so if he takes the full 3 days, he'll miss the first 2 games of the series. So
please do take care of your family, Jose. Yes. Take care of it. Don't worry about it. You're good. We want you to take care of your family.
Exactly. Yeah. So hopefully he does that. And then David Fry has been another guy that's been just incredible for him. So those have been kind of I think when I looked at those are their 4 hitters that are above average, and everybody else was like right at 100 WRC plus or below. So those 4 drive the offense. Their bullpen has been insane. They're first in the MLB by quite a bit in every metric you look at, and it's like 1 through 8 in that bullpen has been phenomenal. But the rotation, I think when I looked, was like 26th or 27th in F4 and like around 20th in ERA. So if they do have a weakness, it is the rotation. We do face their best pitcher game 2 against Tanner Bybee. But game 1, Tristan McKenzie hasn't been that good. Game 3, Logan Allen, who shut us down, in the second series of the year, hasn't been that good. So, and I think we would go with what? So it'll be Miller versus McKenzie.
Yep.
Probably benefit to us. Game 2 is Wu versus Bybee. With how Wu's been going, I'd give us, the advantage there, although it's close. And then game 3 is Castillo versus Allen, which is a pretty big pitching advantage. So I think with them, it's you got to get to the starters and get a lead because the bullpen on their end's so good. And then if you can hold down their big 4 hitters, you've got a chance. But they're pesky. I mean, we've seen it when we play Cleveland. They don't strike out. They kind of spray the ball all over the park, and they've hit a lot more home runs this year too. So they're a little bit more dangerous in that regard too. So it'll be a really, really good challenge. They're a good team. And like you said, I think we're 3 games behind them for the 2nd seed. And it would be awesome if we could get that first round bye just to rest relievers and line up the starting pitching. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I will say that right now, like I've with this season, the way it's gone, I've really looked forward to these series and the challenges for the Mariners, because this is who you're going to face if you get to the playoffs, is going to be teams like Cleveland. So really always excited to see, and the 9-game lead doesn't hurt. It makes it a little less stressful, but These are the teams you're going to face, in the playoffs. So it's a great challenge for this Mariners team to kind of show that they can beat, these type of opponents. I'm with you on all 3 games. I think you could give the Mariners the advantage in all 3. I think game 2's up for debate, but 50-50 in terms of the pitching matchup. Looks like Tristan McKenzie's bounced back a little bit. I know he was off to a really rough start this season. Looks like his numbers have settled in a little bit. I haven't watched a lot of Guardians, so I'm not sure if the underlying numbers have settled in, but his ERA is at 4.1. I remember early in the year, he was just getting shelled. And there was some even worries about injury, I think. And then Logan Allen, he's 7-3, but his ERA is in the 5. So, like you said, he should feel pretty good. It's another team that we face that don't let it get to the bullpen, especially the back end with Clase. It's going to be hard to score runs against him and really anybody in that Guardians bullpen. So, like you said, it's a team that doesn't strike out. Those teams tend to, I feel like, give the Mariners fits. Maybe I've just noticed it more. I don't have really a lot of data to back that up, but it just seems like The Nationals don't strike out a lot. The Royals don't strike out a lot. And those teams are aggressive against the Mariners because they throw a lot of fastballs, a lot of strikes, and they put the ball in play, and it just works out against the Mariners pitching staff, it seems. Not that I don't trust this pitching staff to pitch well in this series, but these teams do seem to give them some fits. But, you got the day off today. You're rested after the series. Bullpen's good to go for the Mariners. Should be getting Ty France back. That's going to help. So I'm excited. I think it's definitely a series that I don't make a lot of series predictions because you're probably the same way. Baseball's just weird. Anything can happen. Yeah. I never predict sweeps. I think you can win 2 out of 3. I wouldn't be shocked if the Guardians won this series at all either. Just, as long as you don't get swept and give yourself a chance to win the series, I'll feel pretty good about it.
Yep, agree. And yeah, a good point on the bullpen. And one thing I'll say is very, very encouraged by Munoz. I know he had like a back injection early last week. And so I was really happy when he threw Thursday, Friday, so back-to-back. And then they even had him up again yesterday. So they were willing to go with him 3 out of 4 days. And so to me, that, kind of says that whatever injection or treatment he had, it seems like it maybe, got that back stiffness or issue out of the way. Because if it didn't, I don't think he'd have went back-to-back. And I certainly don't think he would have went 3 out of 4 days. So, and now he's had, 3 days off going into the Guardians series. So I think that's huge. It seems like hopefully that issue for Munoz is in the past. And now, they can kind of just use him as they see fit and not have to kind of worry with that in the back of their mind. So I think that was another great kind of a development last week, was getting Munoz back up there back-to-back.
And he looked good too. I was a little concerned, like, would he look rusty? I know he gave up the run against the White Sox, and I think it was kind of, I want to call it a BS run, but it was inherited run, ghost runner. Nicky Lopez slaps one into left field. Vaughn hits one too weakly for double play.
Yeah.
I thought Munoz looked fine on Thursday, looked great on Friday. And yeah, you're right. Now that looks like they're willing to use him back-to-back. He's had 3 days off. You assume these games against Cleveland will be close. Should be good to be able to use Munoz, Tuesday and Wednesday, assuming he's not throwing 30 pitches or something in the first outing. Feel pretty good that he should be able to give you back-to-back. And then, if you can do that and you win the first 2, I don't want to say I don't care about the third game, but I'm a lot more, whatever about it when you win a series. So that's going to be huge. And then, I think everything's settled in for this series. So, obviously Mariners still a little banged up with Polanco out, but you should be pretty much all hands on deck for this one. And then you made a good point after the first 2 games. Last point we'll make, then we'll get out of here. But, they face 2 righties to start the series. Then it's like 4 or 5 games in a row. They're going to face a lefty. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. Face Allen. Game 3 was a lefty. And then the Marlins right now, last I looked, had 3 lefties lined up to face us. So it'll be 4 games in a row facing a lefty. And then I think in Tampa, we face 3 righties again. So yeah, it'll be a big run on lefties after the first 2 games.
And that's, I think getting Ty France back will help with that big time. Would be great to see during that stretch, like a little Mitch Haniger hot streak. Mm-hmm. That's where you need, Julio, Garver, Haniger. I mean, you always need those guys, but especially against the lefties, where I feel like the Mariners have struggled against lefties. I don't even have the numbers up, but it just really feels like they haven't hit lefties as well. I don't know. Maybe I have that wrong, but it just kind of feels like that to me.
Yeah, I think when I looked earlier in the year, they had handled lefties better than they had in the past, but I'm not sure where they're at. But yeah, no, I agree. It seems to have been a little bit of thorn in their side for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's just been some things with the other side of platoons where, Demo's been in a bit of a slump and he's playing against lefties. Haniger's had some moments, has looked great. They're not really playing Rayleigh against lefties. Cal started off the year really good right-handed, has cooled off a little bit. Historically, it's been Cal's weaker side. It's where they just really need a guy like Mitch Garver. That's where you have him, and you need him to really step up. And Julio, too, to be perfectly honest. So it's going to be fun. Bottom line is, I don't want to speak for you, but I could not be more excited about this ball club right now. It has been so much fun.
Yeah, completely agree. After that rough start they got to, they've been playing really good ball, over 2 months now. It started back on April 15th. And to me, it seems like they're picking up even more steam with the offense, becoming more and more consistent. The rotation's been solid all year long. So haven't been this excited for a season in a long time. It's just, like you said, it's fun to be playing out in front. And I still think there's more for this team to tap into. So it's not like they're here because everybody's performing over their career levels. They've kind of found a way to get here, and I think there's a lot more in the tank as well. And I think they're certainly capable of unlocking that. So very excited to see how the season unfolds.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll end on that, but it really is all the talk of, oh, Houston's getting these guys back. Texas is too. I don't know. Seattle has not played their best baseball. Julio is still not like fully dialed in yet this year. Your best player, the guy that, I predicted the AL MVP. I think I'm just going to do that for Julio the rest of my life, honestly. But, he's been swinging that much better, but he's still not like his season OPS is still like 680 something. Wow. So, I mean, when these guys really get going, I do think the sky's the limit for this team. So fans, be excited. This has been a really, really fun season, and we'll be here through it all. Got anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Nope, I'm good to go. I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to the game starting up tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Perfect. Yep, you're always welcome to come on here. Always enjoy having you, my friend. Everybody remember to like, comment, subscribe. Follow MarinersSUR on Twitter, and we will see you all next week for another Mariners Weekly Recap. Let's take it to the Guardians this week. Go Mariners.